The reason they like reading my stuff is that I've always got real life examples to prove what I'm saying.
There's a lot of good people that listen to this podcast.
Other than God and my family, deer hunting would be next in line on my list of priorities.
From the bottom of our hearts, it's just fantastic and awesome to have the support that you guys are giving.
People ask me about expandable broadheads and love swings.
Chasing Giants with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. Brought to you by Osseo Camo, nature's most lethal camouflage. Follow along as Don and Terry discuss the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails.
Well, welcome everyone to the Chasing Giants podcast, episode 170, brought to you by Osseo Gear. I got the man Don Higgins on the screen or on the other end of the phone, depending on how you're listening to the podcast tonight. Don, it's May 20th, and we're at 170. These episodes and weeks just keep clicking away. It seems like yesterday we were in February doing forestry work. Now we're finishing up all of our food plot work.
Yeah, the calendar keeps turning, and we're about to end that dead period. I probably do less with deer during the month of June than any other month. I try to have my food plots in by the 1st of June, and then there's that dead period as I'm waiting to get my cameras out the 1st of July. And this June, I'm going to spend time with family. I'm going to go see grandson's baseball games, and I told them I'd sleep out and go camping with them along a creek or river somewhere. And that's going to be my June. But boy, I'm looking forward to July 1st and getting them cameras out.
Well, I can tell you one thing. You need to go upstairs in the loft in your shed and get one of those cots and take and put in that tent, because you do not want to be sleeping on the ground. They'll have to bring a skid loader in to get you up.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, speaking of that, I was on the skid loader today doing some work. I'd cut some trees and I was piling them, and I was on that skid loader for probably pushing 2 hours. And when I went to get off of that thing, I'll tell you what, I was all stiff and seized up, just about fell out of the thing, and getting old's no fun.
Yeah. Well, we got a fun episode tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about chemicals, because I know spray season is here for some products and just around the corner for others. I want to talk and pick your brain about herbicides a little bit. We're going to talk about fawns dropping. You have a really interesting property for the Biofarm segment. You and Wayne Keller are actually going to talk about this one together, because you know this property personally. So you're going to want to stick around for that. Kevin Miller is going to talk a little bit about the donation that the Higgins Outdoors family made for a consulting visit for that Haiti ministry. We're going to learn how much money was raised for that. And then I have a special prayer request for Lester's feet that I want to talk about at the end. So let's just dive in. Over the last week, there hasn't been a lot done, because I don't know about you, but I finished up all of my food plots at 10:45 on Mother's Day night, and it rained. It's rained 3 different times since I planted. And it was raining again this morning, and I went over to the farm and was moving some equipment back over on trailers. I don't leave everything over there. I need some of it over here. And my beans are already sprouting, and I'm sure the corn is not far behind it. So we got 3 timely rains within the first 7 days after I planted. I know you're done with food plots. What's the weather been? I know a lot of areas got some rain that they really needed it out in Kansas and such.
Yeah, we on Mother's Day night, we got 2 inches of rain, and I had just planted my soybeans the day before on Saturday. So the next day, next evening, we get 2 inches of rain, and it came fast and hard. So Monday I go out there, and that rain had washed across my soybean plot. I got 2 soybean plots this year, a big one and a smaller one, and that big one there's a little bit of a slope on that ground, and that rain came washing across there, and at the edge of the field, it was corn stalks that I no-tilled into. Well, those corn stalks all washed off of the field to the edge, and then they got hung up in the grass on the edge and the clover. But a lot of them soybeans had actually washed out of the ground, and they were all just piles of soybeans along my corn stalks. So I'm guessing I'm going to be replanting a soybean plot this week. I'm going to give it till about Monday or Tuesday and replant that one soybean plot anyway. I think the other one will be fine. And that was the only rain. We got a couple of times it was just, I mean, enough rain to wet the walk was just about it. I mean, it didn't even register on the rain gauge, but we needed it when we got it too. I noticed today that the miscanthus I planted, what was it, probably 2 weeks ago? I don't know, it wasn't even quite 2 weeks ago. Probably 10 days ago, we planted miscanthus, and there's some of that starting to pop through the ground.
Yep.
The corn test plots, you know, I showed you those little the little envelopes I got right here on my
Little
desk.
baggies. Yeah.
Little
Cover that
envelopes of
label.
corn. Yeah. That stuff is I noticed today it's coming up. My NutriCrave corn looks fantastic. That's the first stuff I planted this year. And I mean, I got a fantastic stand on that. So if I can keep the critters off of it until it gets some size on it, I ought to be good. Still seen my turkeys only once this week. I seen one hen along the edge of switchgrass plot, and I'm guessing that she's got a nest in there and just came out to eat on my soybeans before she went back in to sit on her nest again. Quail, I've got more quail than I've seen in probably at least a decade. Almost daily I'm seeing quail, pheasants. This place is just turning into a wildlife paradise, and just hope there's at least one big buck around come fall.
Yep. So, you know, down here, I forget, I listed out on social media how many different varieties I planted on the farm. I think I spent more time changing the planter over than I did actually seeding, it seemed like. But got all that done. 3 timely rains. Let's talk just a little bit about, we've been getting a lot of questions about for people that planted miscanthus maybe last year or the year before, and they're starting to get some weeds coming up through it. And herbicide is just such a vital part of taking care of competition when it comes to switchgrass and miscanthus especially. We know we can treat miscanthus very similar to corn, since it's a grass product. Can you elaborate a little bit on that for the listeners? You know, what types of products used on corn could be used in basically post-emergent applications on miscanthus for year 2, 3, whatever we need?
Yeah, we need to be careful when we talk about corn, because a lot of corn today has been genetically modified where you can spray Roundup or whatever over the top of it. But
Good point.
if we're talking, you know, non-GMO corn, you can spray the same things on the miscanthus that you can non-GMO corn. So a residual herbicide like basically just about any of them you use on corn, atrazine, simazine, Resicor.
So you can spray that on the miscanthus after it's emerged and you got green shoots coming out?
Well, it's a lot better if you do it early, you know, to prevent those
Right.
weeds from ever coming on. And once the weeds are coming on, then about the only thing you can spray on top of that miscanthus at that point is 2,4-D. And 2,4-D will take care of any broadleaves. It won't do much for the grasses. Now you could also spray quinclorac for foxtail and such, but you got to get that foxtail when it's really young, or it's not going to work. It just doesn't.
Foxtail is one of the nastiest things we got around here. Luckily we don't have mare's tail and water hemp here, but we got a ton of foxtail. And I know that's a big challenge for a lot of people. We've gotten a couple questions from people that's got ragweed coming up in their miscanthus. So I don't know what'll kill that.
2,4-D will take care of it. It'll toast it.
Okay.
Yep.
Good to know. Switchgrasses, any other different techniques or applications, or can we basically use that along the lines of switchgrass?
Well, you can use the 2,4-D on switchgrass just as you do miscanthus. The residuals, though, you got to be a lot more careful with. That, you know, the residual is going to prevent weeds, and it basically stops it at the seed level. That switchgrass is being grown from a seed, whereas miscanthus is being grown from a rhizome. So that rhizome is a little more tolerant than the switchgrass seed is. But the switchgrass seed is tolerant to atrazine or simazine. So you could spray those on as residuals to prevent, a lot of weeds. We're getting late enough now that most of the weeds are coming up and, they're growing. So if you're going to go spray them with 2,4-D, you could throw some atrazine or simazine in the tank at the same time and not only kill the weeds that are up and growing, but also prevent some weeds. But, really the switchgrass is growing so good right now, and the miscanthus as well. So 2 weeks ago, we got that first big rain. We got an inch in one rain, and then 24 hours later, we got 6/10, and it came perfect. And I'm telling you, the week after that rain, before we got the second big 2-inch rain, my switchgrass and miscanthus both. Well, the switchgrass grew at least a foot, and the miscanthus might have grew 2 foot. I mean, it just exploded. Wow. But we were really dry, and it needed the moisture. Then as soon as it got the moisture, it got a lot of moisture at once. It just took off and exploded. And we also got a little bit of heat to go with it. So
sure,
it really took off.
Yep. So the only other one that's coming along, it's probably going to be, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 weeks for the guys who have soybeans germinating. We talk about this every year for your Generation 2 or your glyphosate tolerant Roundup Ready. Be very careful about the Roundup that you're choosing at like Tractor Supply, Rural King. There's a lot of weed killer out there that has a very small percentage of a secondary herbicide in it, and those will kill your beans. We have it happen every year. Somebody calls us, somebody sends us a picture of their dead soybean field, and they said they sprayed it with Roundup, and it ended up being that Roundup Max. I forget the different names of it on there. We've covered this every year. So as you guys are out shopping for your chemical programs right now, make sure as a food plotter you understand Roundup Ready soybeans or glyphosate tolerant. You have to use a product that only has glyphosate in it.
Yeah. What you want to look for is the active ingredient on the chemical or on the label. And the active ingredient is glyphosate. And if it says anything else on top of glyphosate, do not use it. Yep. And I think there's one product, for example, that's called glyphosate plus. Well, that plus is plus another chemical. And that other chemical absolutely toasts the soybeans. And like you said, Terry, every single year we get somebody, and usually it's multiple people, contacting us. I sprayed glyphosate and it killed my beans. Well, you sprayed glyphosate plus something else and it killed your beans.
Yep. And then obviously we have our Enlist program. That's going to be able to handle Liberty, 2,4-D, or glyphosate, but 2,4-D is kind of the connection in the two. You don't want to mix your Liberty and your Roundup together. So it's either going to be Roundup and 2,4-D or Liberty and 2,4-D.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so my experience is Liberty, when you compare Liberty and glyphosate, Liberty does better on broadleafs and it doesn't do quite as good on grasses. Glyphosate does fantastic on grasses, but there's some broadleafs that have become resistant to it. So if you planted Enlist soybeans, you're trying to decide, well, what do I spray? Take a look at what weeds you're trying to control. If it's broadleafs like mare's tail, water hemp, then you definitely want to go with Liberty. But if it's grasses like foxtail or whatever, then you'd be better off with glyphosate.
Oh, good insight there. Let's take a quick break and listen to our commercial from Osseo. I just saw the killer Joe Miles shot a big old headed bear up in Canada and is flying back. So congratulations. I'm sure they're going to talk about that on the Mission Whitetail. And just as a little bit of a teaser, the next round of Chasing Giants t-shirts that get sent out are actually going to have a little bit of Osseo camo on it. So we're excited about that. We're partnering even closer with Joe. So for all of those of you who don't know, when you submit a question and we use it on this podcast, you get a t-shirt. And when we run out of these t-shirts and the next ones come in, there'll be a new style. So all of you all who have submitted multiple questions will have a different style t-shirt. So listen up here as we hear about Osseo Camo.
Osseo Gear introduces a premium line of bow hunting gear that is unmatched, pairing nature's finest camouflage with the best technological innovations. Osseo Gear brings whitetail bow hunters the gear they need to be the best at their craft. The unique camouflage mimics the intricate feather pattern of North America's greatest predatorial creatures. Designed for invisibility, built for comfort, and engineered for function. Visit AsioGear.com. That's ASIO Gear.com to start shopping. Asio Gear, prepare to be invisible.
All right, Don. Couple cool things happened this week. Got my new Matthews bow in the mail. I took a picture of that on social media. I believe it came in on Friday. Was on the porch when I got home from work. For those of you who don't know, Don is on actually the very short list of people that shoot at the prototype bow, or I shouldn't say it's prototype, it's the early release, so that he can, there's a group of people that are creating marketing collateral ahead of time, and then they release their bow, usually I believe in like late November, December. And you're going to be getting your new bow in September to shoot for this season. So Matthews takes good care of us. We appreciate that, but also the support of Lester's Feet. There is some, I wish I could talk about it on the podcast, but we always talk about the people behind Matthews and how they're so into mission work and faith-based, supporting missionary work. You guys are not going to believe what's coming down the pipeline, and they've shared with us. I'm just so excited. Such an honor to be partnered with somebody that focuses that much on ministry. But the other thing that I posted on social media, I don't know if you saw it or not, but I had somebody call me and ask me if I wanted a free gravity wagon the other day.
Oh, I seen the picture today.
Yeah, so it's old rusted out gravity wagon, and I've been sitting here on the farm, and I'm kind of in this mode where you're trying to think about the deer that were at certain age structures last year that you knew lived. And I think I'm coming up on a problem where I'm going to have too many deer this coming hunting season that I'm just not willing to shoot that are of a older age structure. And when I look at how I want to hunt and spend my time closer to the rut in Illinois, going after a target buck there that I know lived, I'm going to end up having to use rifle season here in Kentucky to take some kids and try to kill a couple of these mature bucks. And I need a blind on a ridge on the knoll of a hill, but I don't want a blind there all the time. So it was just, I was sitting there planting beans and corn all last weekend saying, how can I do this? How can I do this? And sure enough, the next day somebody calls me and says, you want this gravity wagon? So I'm looking for ideas. Anybody who listens to the podcast, I'm looking at turning this gravity wagon into a mobile blind. I'm actually going to install a new 360 on the property this year, but that's in a different area. I need it on a knoll, and I need to be able to move it. I don't want it in the alfalfa field while we're cutting hay. So if you have experience turning a gravity wagon into an enclosed blind, I would love to see your ideas. So send them my way. Let's talk a little bit about fawns, Don. Have you seen any drop? I've seen a couple pictures on social media.
I have not seen any yet, but it's about that time. And I just seen an announcement today, I think it was, that some DNR state agency had announced that in the next 2 weeks, 80% of the fawns will be born. And I'd say they're pretty close to being accurate from all my years with the captive deer. Around Memorial Weekend, I would just have fawns dropping right and left when I had those captive deer, and that's next weekend. So I would say we're real close to that peak of fawning.
Yeah, it's exciting. Really, the only thing it changes is I won't mow for probably another month and a half. So I really have an area that I need to mow. They're going to be mowing alfalfa, so I'm going to be walking the alfalfa field before they mow, and they're running the mower conditioner over it. That's really the only thing that I change with my approach, because I definitely don't want anybody, if we can, it happens unfortunately, but try not to run over a fawn while we're mowing. So I probably won't mow again until mid-June to 4th of July, I would guess.
Yeah, I just mowed my clover this week, and I won't mow again till probably about the 4th of July, probably.
Yeah. So make sure everybody, if you're mowing hay, if you're out bush hogging, walk that area first. Make sure that you're not, because those fawns, they'll lay up when they're new. When they're first born, they will not move. I think their mama doe told them that they need to stay right there. You need to get them about a month old, and then they'll scurry off into the woods, and so be careful of that. Well, I don't have anything else besides that. Before we move on to the questions, do you have anything?
Nope, I'm ready for questions. Throw them
All
up
right,
there.
let's throw the first one up tonight.
Okay, the first one comes from Brian Miller from Noblesville, Indiana. He says, Don and Terry, big fan of your show, never miss an episode. I am a former Illinois resident who now lives in Indiana, but I do own property and hunt mainly in Illinois. I am hoping my question will send Don off the rails on one of his wonderful political rants about the corrupt state of Illinois. As a former resident and landowner, I couldn't agree more and can totally sympathize. Have you heard of Illinois House Bill 0676, which would prohibit the discharge of a firearm within 1,000 yards of a residential dwelling? This would include hunting with firearms, the way I understand it. I mainly hunt archery with a compound bow and fixed blade broadheads, but I also participate in the firearms season, and the property I own has a residential home within 1,000 yards of it. This is total BS and a perfect example of Illinois politicians constantly chipping away at the rights of its citizens. Would love to hear your thoughts. Keep up the great work, and God bless. Well, Brian, I don't know how much of a rant I'm going to go on. To be honest, I don't pay too much attention anymore to the news. One big reason for that is I don't trust the news. The other thing is when I would watch the news, I'd get a bad attitude. And since I've been watching the news, I've got a good attitude, so I'm probably not going to go on too much of a rant. I heard about the bill you're describing, and every year, and it might be like this in all states, I don't know, but every year I see bills that have been introduced in Illinois that are just absolutely ridiculous. But the majority of the time, they never even make it to a full vote. They'll get killed in committee and are never even voted on. And I'm hoping this one's the same way, although these anti-gun idiots in Illinois have become so determined to take guns out of the hands of law-abiding citizens that they're going to any length necessary to make it happen.
Yep.
I'm not one for. I would like to go on a rant, I'll tell you, but this podcast gets heard by a lot of people, and some of them like me and some of them don't. I think there's people listening to this podcast just to see if they can find something to talk bad about me or find something negative that they can throw out. And I've got people that don't like me in the Illinois DNR, no doubt about that. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they don't listen to this podcast just trying to catch me on some technicality. So I'm not going to get into big gun debates. Just say I'm pro Second Amendment. I'm as conservative as a person as you'll ever meet. Nothing that happens in the state of Illinois surprises me. We just got to stay focused on the good Lord, because the end of the story is written in the Bible, and we don't like what we're seeing of this world right now, but we know that there's that our future is promised, and our future is better than anything this earth can hold, and we got to hold our hope on that, and that's what's kept me from my ranch. Another thing I'm doing this summer, I mentioned that I'm not going on my speaking tour that I typically do in the summer, and I'm going to spend more time with my family, but I'm also trying to read the entire New Testament of the Bible, and started that a few days ago. So every night before I go to bed, I read a few chapters. But this world can get you down if you let it, and especially if you follow the politics. So I'm trying to move away from that. I'm trying to stay positive. I'm a lot better person to be around. I've got a better attitude, and I know how the story ends anyway. We know this stuff's coming down the pike, so best I can do. Sorry to disappoint you because I didn't get on too much of a rant, but we got to stay focused on the promise that's given to us through Christ, and not let the world get us down.
Well, I'd like to encourage this person to, instead of sending a question to a podcast and having us go on a rant, call your local officials, the people that are voting on this, and make it, document it, send them stuff, to state your position. They might be just as corrupt as everybody else, but it doesn't do a bit of good for us to go on a rant when these guys don't even understand what they're even talking about. They're worried about shooting a gun within 1,000 yards of a house. But I drive I-70 in Illinois and see deer blinds within 60 yards of the interstate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just doesn't matter. So yeah, if you have a strong belief in something, make it known to the people that are putting those bills in, and do the best you can on that. But it doesn't do any good for us to go on rants on this thing.
I can share a pretty interesting story. Just happened to me today. Well, I've had 2 different groups stop by my house and leave information on the door about windmills. They're trying to put a wind farm in this area. Well, today I'm going out to, just hopped on my side by side, backing out of the shed, going to go do some habitat work, and got my chainsaw in the back and everything. And I see this car pulling up in the drive. I live up a long lane, and anybody that comes up here, they want something, Well, this lady gets out and she's looking for Don Higgins. Like, well, you found him. Well, she was with the windmill company, and she wanted us to get me signed up as a supporter of these windmills. And well, me and the lady had a little bit of a discussion on politics, and she was telling me that they're looking to lease, and I don't understand how this all works, but she said 30,000 acres, but they're only going to have 50 to 75 windmills. So there'll be like a mile between windmills on this, and everybody in that. So you could be in that 30,000 acres and not even have a windmill on your farm.
They could skip,
but
right
they're
over
still going to pay you. They're still going to pay you, even though you don't have a windmill on your farm. They're still going to pay you like $60 an acre per year. And I'm like, where's this coming from? I said, the biggest thing I have against windmills is, I promise you're giving me $60 an acre, but Joe Biden and every corrupt politician is taking money back under the table because it's all subsidized. And she admitted to me it is subsidized. So we're putting these stinking giant eyesores out on the countryside. We're paying the landowner. And then one of my neighbors told me that he was approached by him, and he carried on the conversation. I wouldn't even listen to her sales pitch. And he said that they were going to pay him $30,000 a year for a half acre of his ground. $30,000 a year. You cannot tell me that those stinking windmills are making that much energy. I'm telling you what, if one of them windmills ran nonstop for 100 years with zero maintenance, it would never pay for itself. And these environmental wackos that support this kind of stuff, they think it's clean energy. She was telling me it's clean energy. I'm like, lady, how much energy went into manufacturing that one windmill? I mean, you got concrete that's like 30 foot deep. I mean, so somebody had to, go to the gravel pit. They had to mine out that gravel to make the concrete. The concrete company had to mix it up, and they had to put the mortar in it, and they had to truck it. Yeah, the steel. Then you got the electronics within it, and the copper and whatever. Like, crap, they spend more energy making the stinking thing than it'll ever produce. And it's all about government money under the table. And I told her, I said, I am a capitalist 100%. The government needs to get the heck out of all business. If anything that needs subsidized is absolute a bad idea, just forget it. I don't care if it's farming, it's windmills, it's solar. I don't care. If the government has to pay you to do it, that's just a way for Joe Biden and the other crooked politicians to get kickback under the table. That's all it is. I guarantee you. Okay, there's my rant.
Mission success there, buddy. You got him going off a little bit. All right, Don. Well, you haven't done a buy farm segment in a while, but we left that one as a doozy for you.
Well, I've been on that property. I forget even how many times, and for a number of years. Probably at least the last 10 years I've been on that farm numerous times, and lots of potential there.
Yep. All right, well, let's check out question number 2 that was submitted.
All right, this one comes from Matthew Montag from Goshen, Ohio. He says, "Hey, Don and Terry, you both have talked a lot about burning switchgrass every few years to keep down weeds and saplings. My question, is there a similar need to maintain perennials such as clover? If your clover stand gets filled with weeds, how do you go about removing weeds without affecting the clover? Is there a chemical you can spray, or would mowing help? Thanks for all you guys do." Well, Matthew, I can tell you this. I have grown clover on my farm for probably 30 years now. And I can count on one hand the times I've sprayed a chemical on clover. And I know there's some information out there totally to the contrary of what I'm going to say. But the best thing that you can do for your clover is mow it. That mowing will set that weed back, and it'll actually stimulate the clover. If you go mow your yard, what happens? It stimulates your grass to grow. The same way with your clover. You mow your clover, it stimulates it to grow, but the weeds that you mow at the same time, it stunts them, it sets them back, and eventually that clover takes over and you get a pure stand. And I can't tell you how many times I've been to a consulting client's property and I've seen clover plots that look more like weed patches than they do clover plots. And all you need to do is mow about once a month, starting in the spring and stopping about September. And, you know, I mentioned earlier that I mowed my clover plots this week. It's the second time I mowed them. I mowed them about a month ago. I mowed them again this week. I'll probably mow them again towards the end of June, 1st of July, again August, again September, depending on the rain. And when you do that, it keeps the weeds back. And I don't know why it has not been promoted more to mow your clover. The thing that mowing will not do is take care of grasses in your clover. If you get grasses in your clover, the mowing is not going to set that grass back. It's not going to kill it. If you got a grass issue with your clover, then you need to spray clethodim. And clethodim will kill that grass. It's slow acting. It'll take a while to get the job done, but it will kill the grass and not harm your clover. So that's my spiel on clover maintenance.
Well, we're actually gonna skip to question number 5 because I think the two go hand in hand with each other. So let's just go ahead while we're on a clover subject and take care of this, because this gets specific, not about weeds, but this theory out right now about biomass.
Yeah, so this one comes from Fred Capel from Valmeyer, Illinois. He says, "Hi, Don and Terry. I was listening to NDA's podcast this week. I guess that's the National Deer Association. It says Mark Turner, a professor from University of Tennessee, said you should only mow clover and other perennials once a year during the late summer. He went on to say mowing only reduces forage biomass, doesn't improve the quality, and reduces deer usage of the plot. What are your thoughts on this?" My thoughts is that this guy has spent way too much time in a textbook and not enough time in the real world. Mowing clover is absolutely the best thing you can do for it. And here's why. As that clover plant matures, the nutrient content of that plant slowly rises. And then once it reaches maturity, the nutrient content starts to decline. Well, when you come along and you cut that clover, that decline never happens. It stays at that point where it's got new growth. That new growth is where the nutrients are. And when you mow it, what's that cause the plant to do? It causes that plant to put on new growth, and that new growth has more nutrients than old mature growth. Totally disagree with this. I don't have a scientist PhD behind my name or anything like that, but I do have real world experience, and I'm telling you, mow your clover. And here's what you want to look for in your clover plot. When you start seeing a lot of white blooms, I mean, like the whole plot is just loaded with white blooms, it's time to mow it. You don't want that clover plant to go to seed. You want to cut it and let it reset, and it'll try to reproduce again. It'll put new growth on. It'll put blooms on again. But what you want to do is cut it. When you start seeing a lot of white blooms, don't let them blooms fully turn to seed. Cut it when you see the white blooms about once a month, and you'll have a way better clover plot than if you do what Fred says, or whatever the dude's name was from Tennessee.
Yeah. So we don't know who Mark Turner is. The thing on the question, and we didn't hear the podcast, so to attack Mark and say, I mean, all we know is what Fred has relayed to us.
Okay, this one comes from Tyler Dewar Walker. I hope I said your name right, Tyler. If not, I apologize. Tyler is from Sparta, Wisconsin, home of Matthews. He says, Dear Don and Terry, thank you for all you do for this great sport God has blessed us with. I listen to your podcast every week, and it's always great to listen to fellow Christians who also enjoy the same sport I am very passionate about. I truly enjoy the different insights you both bring on topics at hand. I have always been passionate about deer, but I have since evolved into really enjoying the land management piece just as much. And the reason I'm submitting a question is we rent out our cropland to a crop farmer, and each year, and he does either soybeans or corn. This is great in the early season as we always have an abundance of food to utilize and have available for the deer. But once he harvests the crops, we are left with very little food to get us through the winter. I do plant some smaller hunt plots, and he does leave some corn, soybeans standing, but it is not enough to give the deer what they need for the winter. So I am trying to find a way to provide the deer with more food. My questions for both of you is, what is the best seed type to use to overseed into the soybean and or corn in the late summer, early fall? Is this a viable option? If not, what would you suggest in this type of situation? That is a great option, Tyler. Absolutely a fantastic option. And in fact, the farm that I hunt in Iowa, when I go over there, or I'm going to go over there in late August, and we're going to have a drone come in and overseed into the farmer's crops there. I'm going to take some seed from Real World and have it put in some specific locations in the crop fields. And then the farmer that owns the farm is going to have a mix of his own that he's going to put over the rest of the farm. But that is a fantastic way to add food. It's great for, if you can get your farmer on board, it's great for his soil. It just adds nutrients to his soil. Lots of benefits. It's a cover crop's what it is, and it stops erosion or cuts back on erosion. Anyway, it helps the soil become more porous where it'll absorb more water instead of having the water run off. Just a lot of benefits to a cover crop. So the fact that didn't he say he owns the farm and he rents it out to a farmer? So the fact that you own the farm, you ought to be able to call the shots, and you ought to insist that as part of the ag program on that farm, that a cover crop is planted every year, and it's done in such a way that it's done at the right time so that you get to benefit from it. And you ought to insist also that he does no fall tillage. So he harvests his crop, and as soon as he harvests, boom, that cover crop's probably already going to be coming on before he ever does the harvest. But then once he gets the crop out of the way, it just explodes at that point. And with no fall harvest, if you've got 40 acres of tillable ground on your farm, you should have a 40-acre food plot. And you should definitely be holding deer. The fact that you own property gives you a huge advantage over a deer hunter who does not own property. And it doesn't matter if you lease your hunting or your farm ground out or not, you still should be able to take advantage of those ag fields, and that's how you do it.
Yeah. Work with your farmer on fall tillage and also chemical application, and make sure that what you're putting down is not going to conflict with what he's doing. The last thing you want is for him putting a bunch of money on herbicide down and then you putting a bunch of money on seed down and it not working. Any cereal grain is great. Great products. And then any up that north, I would put in like a Deadly Dozen plot topper type mix. that would work really well that far north. That's going to produce a lot of diversity and put a lot of different types of plants that are going to be palatable at different times during hunting season.
Yep. Great advice on the herbicide, Terry. You want to make sure that farmer is not going to use a residual herbicide in the spring that's going to carry over into the fall and prevent your seeds that you plant from growing. So yeah, you and him need to get on the same page.
Yep. All right. Well, we're going to take just a quick break and get an update from Kevin Miller on the recent auction for the Haiti ministry, and then we'll come back for the last question of the night.
Well, as promised, I have Kevin Miller on the phone. We mentioned it just a little bit ago. Kevin is part of a group that raises money in the Russellville, Guthrie, Kentucky, Hopkinsville area for ministry and outreach in Haiti. And they just had their big auction this weekend. And Kevin, you came on the show tonight to talk a little bit about how that went and who ended up purchasing the Higgins Outdoors Land Consulting Package with Osseo and Real World helping out.
Yes, we did. I just got home, actually. It's been a long day.
So how did the overall event go? Was there a lot of people? How much money did you raise? Tell us a little bit about the day.
Yeah, it went great. We had probably the biggest crowd we've had. This is our 13th annual sale here in Kentucky. And probably the biggest crowd on Friday evening that I know of. Just a tremendous group of bidders and people were out. And Saturday today we had a good crowd as well. And for the main auction. So yeah, all in all, a really, really good sale.
So how did the sale do in comparison to previous years? Did it do well?
Yes, it did. We had the all-time record actually this time as well, which we're very excited about. It was the very final numbers are still we're still waiting to get the exact figures, but it's going to be right around 390,000.
Wow.
For last night and today. So yeah, tremendous sale.
Just think about all the lives that's going to change, not only from a spiritual aspect, but also employment, housing, daily necessity that a third world country, people who have not been there or had family members, go there, just have no appreciation for what these people live with. So, man, congratulations. What a great ministry and outreach, and praise God for just all of the people that came together to make that happen.
That's right. And yeah, it's just tremendous, and I just feel humbled to be a part of it and to be using God's kingdom in this way, and just appreciate all the support.
Let's talk a little bit about the winner that won the land consulting package. Do we know him? Does he know us? Has he listened to the podcast? Do you know anything about him yet?
Yeah, so I hadn't really known this gentleman. He came up to me and talked about it for a while, and I kind of filled him in. I told him, my experience, and it was a great experience with the consulting plan I got from you, Terry, and he just asked him quite a few questions, and he ended up topping the bid. There was a podcast bid that came in, and we used that as the beginning bid, and then there was another one on site, and then he came in with a bid, and it went for $4,200, and just greatly appreciate him and support there. So.
Well, what a blessing. We're thrilled to be able to participate in something small. The way I look at it, your all's community down there, that area between Russellville, Bowling Green, Guthrie, Hopkinsville, has given not only myself but Wes Delks and Don so much support, whether it's listening to the podcast or land consulting jobs. Just so many great friends that we've gotten to meet down there. It's the least we could do to try to help out in this thing. So also want to thank Real World and Osseo for helping just make the prize a little bit better. And we're not going to mention the winner's name on air. We're going to respect his privacy, but he's just got a brand new farm, and we'll contact him this week. And even though we don't normally do consulting visits in the spring, I'm going to leave it up to him. If he wants to try to hunt this place this fall, we might even do something special with him and go down and try to make the best of it, and then do a follow-up visit when I'm down there in your area, because I think I'm going to have a couple more jobs down there over the winter. So we'll make sure it's worth his while. I hope that you told him that he's going to have a lot of reading to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing that I mentioned to him, and this might just segue into a little bit of what I had mentioned this to Terry last week, or whenever it was that we had talked about this, that I would love to be able to talk a little bit about the plan and how my experience. And I just shared with this gentleman today, the tremendous amount of detail that you guys go into with these plans. It's just, the price and for driving, what was it, 4 hours down here and feet on the ground. And then, we go over this thing and we have the rough plan. And then, what you sent was just page after page of detail, and catered to the farm. It made so much sense. And actually is ending up saving us a lot of money, really, because, the food plots are actually going into a better area, it's going to be able to be cleared better than what we were thinking, to be tearing out hardwood stumps and all that. So it's just, I just feel like for myself, it was well worth the money. And that's how I, relate it to this gentleman. I just like, I think Terry would do a great, job for him. So.
Well, I appreciate that. Don's very picky about how we do these plans and making sure that it's not just a take somebody's cash and turn around and run. It's truly a partnership, a friendship, that we're in the weeds with you for the long haul. And I want to tell you something. I cannot wait till I see this creek bottom that we laid out, and phase 1 and phase 2. Yours was a little bit different because we actually did a phase 2, because there's just so much excavating work taking trees out that we knew it wasn't possible for year 1. So we kind of had like a major goal and vision, but made the best of it with the time that we had allowed for year 1 and then year 2. I can't wait to see it.
That's right. Yeah, and I don't know if I mentioned, but the cedar logger is in there, and he's already took out several load, and he's got quite a bit more. So we're very excited too.
Well, I told you, if you all wanted to lay off the property for a year and just let me hunt it the first year, I'd be open to that.
Yeah, well, we may have to talk off air here.
Well, man, congratulations on just a wonderful event, and praise God for all the people that came together, whether it was people who donated stuff or was their bidding. To God be the glory, not us as individuals, but there's going to be so many lives changed with this investment into the souls of people. And that's really all this is for the people involved. It's investment into the souls. And can't thank you guys and all of the groups down there that are coming together to do this. And we're really proud of you, and happy and proud to call you friends.
Absolutely. And y'all the same. So, yes, to God be the glory. And just, I just want to say thank you once again.
You're welcome. Take care, buddy. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
This one comes from R.J. Millis from Anna, Illinois. He says, Don and Terry, do you think the CRP programs are provided with the intent to help wildlife, or do you think that it is a way for the government to regulate grain production? Thanks for the podcast and for always being honest. Well, RJ, you opened a can of worms there, buddy. I just went off on the windmill people. I think the CRP program is a way for the government to appease farmers. I would say it's to buy their vote, but I think most of the farmers that I know anyway are smart enough to see through all this garbage that's going on. I think most of the farmers I know are very conservative, good values, and they vote those values. But at the same time, this CRP program, I'll go back to what I said earlier. I think the government needs to just totally get out of any subsidies. Anything that needs to be subsidized, they just need to avoid it and let the capitalist free market enterprise system work. And CRP provides great wildlife habitat. I utilize it on my farm. And the reason I utilize it is because the government is going to give that money away. I might as well take it because I pay them so much in taxes. I may well get some of it back. me not taking it is not going to solve a thing. I've got a good friend who is a real world dealer, even, that I remember when I did consulting on his farm probably 15 years ago. He was totally against CRP and any government subsidy. Very conservative guy. Him and I agree on everything as far as the government and values and things. But today, that gentleman has got acreage enrolled in CRP. He finally saw the light that we can't make a difference by not doing it. So you might as well just take the money they're going to give you, because if you don't, they're going to give it to somebody else. And all the taxes you pay, you might as well take it. I think they sell the whole thing to farmers as a conservation measure on their farm. They're trying to help with good conservation, which they do. I think it was sold originally when it first started years ago as a way to take acres out of production to help with grain prices. Some of you that are old enough to remember the Farm Aid concerts, Terry, they used to hold back in the early 80s when all the interest rates were sky high and
smoking weed with Willie, right?
Yeah, it was right here at the University of Illinois, the very first one. I remember it. But at that time, a lot of farms were being foreclosed on. The interest rates were sky high, and they came out with these programs to have less acres in ag production, so there was a less crop to sell. But in all the years since then, the production per acre has increased so much that it's kind of counterbalanced each other, that we got less acres in ag production, but those fewer acres are producing more grain than they ever have in the past. But I think of all the government subsidies out there, my favorite would be CRP for obvious reasons. But again, I'm just not a fan of government subsidies of any kind.
Free is never free. Just remember that.
Somebody's paying for it. If
you're getting money from somebody, it's not. There's always a cost to doing business. So, yep. All right. Well, great episode, Don. I think that we gave some insight on a couple things in a lot of different directions, but. As we close the show out, I have a pretty urgent prayer request that out of Lester's Feet, a local family has a 16-year-old boy named Cameron, and with stage 4 cancer, and just the community around here is rallied. But when we have a platform as big as what it is with believers, if you guys could just lift this kid up in your prayers. He spiked a fever again last night. He's in chemo, was supposed to be off on a 2-week break, but now he's back in the hospital with, or at least he was last night with a fever and possibly an infection. And, seeing a sick kid is probably about the most heartbreaking thing you could ever, witness, because there's not one parent that wouldn't want to take their place immediately. So right. Lester's Feet stepped in, and we're helping the family. Obviously, the community is. But what I'm asking for everybody to do is pray for this kid named Cameron, 16-year-old kid from Dry Ridge, Kentucky. I know the family would really appreciate it. So, all right. Well, I don't have anything else, so I guess we'll talk next week. And I guess make sure you get that cot if you're going to go camping on that ground. I'm telling you, you don't want to be sleeping on a stick all night.
Chasing Giants has been brought to you by Osseo Camo, Buy Farm Real Estate Company, 360 Hunting Blinds, Victory Chevrolet, Real World Wildlife Products, Matthews Archery, Novix Tree Stands, Gingerich Tree Farm, WildlifeFarming.com, Quiet Cat, and Vortex Optics. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode of Chasing Giants.